Hello, welcome to today's webinar, Revit Crash Troubleshooting. My name is Patrick Mullins. I'm an AEC Technical Specialist here at Greytech. Greytech have over 270,000 users worldwide, 700 employees spread over 30 offices and 18 countries. We're considered one of the largest Autodesk partners worldwide. We're developers of our own range of software solutions to help you create, simulate, fabricate, and manage your digital processes. For over 15 years, I've been supporting Revit users, and I know the potential causes of Revit crashes. A lot of today's presentation has been inspired by this Autodesk University 2017 class, and I'd like to take the opportunity to acknowledge the authors. So please check it out. It's a lot of what we'll be talking about today will be summarized within this class. Throughout today's webinar, I'll be making reference to numerous Autodesk articles on the Autodesk knowledge base and elsewhere. To help you gain access to those links, I've defined a QR code, as you can see here on the right hand side of the screen at the moment, and that should help you quickly gain access to those links. So I suggest you take a screen grab if you're interested in the particular document that I'm referencing at that given point. Take a screen grab of the QR code and that will give you access directly to that link. I will be summarizing all of these QR codes at the end of the course, so you'll have a second opportunity to reference them if they were of interest to you. Preventative maintenance. Why would you wait for a problem to occur when there's something you can do about it with preventative maintenance? So applying the latest updates to all of the team as and when they occur, and to do it to all team members simultaneously. So if everybody's got the same update, error checking crashes subsequently was considerably easier if you've got a consistent set of updates between all team members. Keep the video driver relatively updated. Again, periodically video drivers become updated. You want to check if you're using the latest one. Monitor the hard drive space. You'll need at least 30 gigabytes for Revit to run effectively. It's easy to lose track of this. Keep a track of how much hard drive space you've got available, 30 gig as a minimum. Empty the Windows temp file. So Windows stores temporary files here in the temp folder. You want to empty that on a regular basis. Audit your project and any links periodically, maybe at least once a week. So the audit command there in Revit is to allow Revit to interrogate the integrity of the project, and if it can detect any problems, it will potentially resolve them before it becomes a bigger problem. Likewise, consider using selective purge on a regular basis. Again, the more efficient your file is, the more trim your Revit projects are, the less likely a problem is likely to occur. If you're using work sharing, generate new local files on a regular basis. Keep the links fresh. Again, occasionally generate new central files for the same reason. Revit warnings. So if there's something that Revit wants you to be aware of, it will let you know with regards a Revit warning, and you'll have the potential to resolve the warning in whatever manner is appropriate. So you want to try and keep Revit warnings to a minimum. Prevention is better than cure. So again, this is probably easier said than done, but you might want to consider vetting Revit families before you start importing them into your projects. By just dragging a Revit family in from an external source, you're taking a leap of faith. You really don't know anything about that Revit family, its origins, and is it suitable for use within your project, and is it safe to use within your project? You might consider investing a bit of time periodically just checking any families that you're going to import within your project. It may save you a great deal of effort later on. If you find potentially that corrupt files is a problem, you might consider periodically checking your model for corrupt files. We have a Revit document here that we can use. So if you find that you can't open or save a Revit project while you're trying to audit it, you'll get error messages, either open or save. If it's open and you can't save it, you'll get potential error messages like this. A fatal error has occurred, it's already crashed, or a file name cannot be opened, or elements are missing within a project. These are all indications of corrupt files, Revit families. So if you were to look at a journal file, you'll see that within the journal file, you'll get a typical message, something along these, where something has failed. So Autodesk have produced a solution to these. There's a workflow where you can export your Revit families, and any corrupt families will be identified. So we're going to take a look at that in greater detail later on. Take a logical approach. Any software can crash, Revit included. The more sophisticated the software, the more potential for crashes to occur. The trick to work out Revit crashes is to look for a pattern of behavior. You make a change, and then is the issue resolved as a result of the change? There are multiple reasons for crashes. It may be that the problem exists within one project itself, or multiple projects. So if it's one project, then that individual project may be corrupt. If it's happening, if the crash is happening or the problem is happening within multiple projects, that's an indication that it's something to do with a setting or a variable within Revit rather than the individual project. Does the project lie with one user? Maybe if one of your colleagues uses your hardware with and logs in under their profile, does the problem disappear? That would be an indication that possibly there's something, the problem applies, the problem applies to you as an individual user. Maybe the problem applies to the hardware. If you try and open up that project on different hardware, is the problem resolved? You have to try and narrow down the potential cause either to a project, to a user, or to an individual PC or group of hardware. You won't be the first person to ever experienced a problem. There's a whole world of help out there to try and help you narrow down these individual problems. So searching for help. There are many potential websites, many of them Autodesk authorized, that will allow you to try and relate to a problem or resolve a problem. The first is the Autodesk Knowledge Network. So as you can see, here's a link. Here's the OCR code that I mentioned earlier on. That will take you to the Autodesk Knowledge website, where you can then search for potential areas, narrow down the cause. Secondly, forums. There are many, many forums out there on specific products, Revit architecture, MEP, structure. Post your problem on one of those forums. Almost certainly somebody will have something to offer. Latest updates. So there are specific sites that will highlight latest updates and any known issues caused by those updates. So it's always worth looking for those. So forums, these are monitored by Autodesk. So there's the official Autodesk forums, and then there are user-defined forums. Again, as I say, monitored by Autodesk. There are websites, or there are sites that will allow you to tie the build number with a specific Revit update. So if you want to know if there are some updates available for your particular version of Revit, you can go to the help within your Revit, and then the build number will then be listed, and then any updates that cross-referenced to that build number could then be cross-referenced. And again, there are sites available, external sites available, that will list all of the relevant service packs historically. So if you suspect that maybe there is an update for your particular version of Revit and you're not familiar, if you're not 100% confident that you've got the latest updates, you can search. So there are many, many websites available that will allow you to visualize, or to help you visualize the potential solutions. So searching for help, as I say, I've created these QR codes, and these should help you follow these links. Emergency resuscitation. Windows updates. So were there any recent Windows updates? Of course, almost everybody knows about this one as a potential cause for crashes within Revit. If there's been a Windows update, something's been changed, something's been added, that can cause undesirable effects with Revit and cause Revit to crash. So were there any recent updates? Always a variable that's worth looking at. Equally, check if there's any hardware driver updates, including video card drivers. So Windows 10, 11 tends to update the hardware drivers, and they can cause issues as well. You can always roll them back if necessary. Fixing the application. Right, so this one isn't so obvious. Okay, so without adequate disk space and at a very bare minimum 5 GB, ideally 30, Revit won't be able to save backups and temporary files. So these days, with computers being upgraded to to smaller drives, it's critical to make sure that you're cleaning periodically to free up space. Whether your computer has enough space or not, it's important to clear out the temp folder, as we've mentioned before. Not everything can be deleted, that's okay. But if Revit crashes, it can leave behind very large temporary files, and that in turn can cause Revit to crash. Graphics related problems, of course. So popular choice is to try and isolate whether or not the problem you're experiencing relates to graphics, and we can turn off hardware acceleration. So what's the benefit of hardware acceleration? So basically, it gives you faster display of large models on a refresh, faster switching between views. It gives you a better representation of realistic mode, ambient occlusion. So basically, that's a shadowing technique to make 3D objects more realistic. Surface transparency and anti-aliasing. So to make sure that you get nice smooth edges on lines, you don't get a stepped effect. So having hardware acceleration on is a benefit, but if you want to test whether or not your graphics card or a driver is causing a problem, you can turn off hardware acceleration. There is a link here which will explain how you can turn off the hardware acceleration if you're not familiar with that. So again, don't forget about the QR codes to gain access to all of these links. Do you have the latest video card installed? Okay. So if Revit's crashing intermittently, it's a good idea to check the video card updates. Autodesk have a dedicated certified hardware, but it's not necessarily the case that you need to use those. Revit will work without them, but it means that those cards have been certified and tested by Autodesk to work seamlessly with Autodesk products. Should you decide to update an old driver for some reason and it makes things worse, well then you can always roll it back. And if you wanted to check if you have the latest certified driver, then again, there's another link here. Which will list certified drivers for Autodesk products, Revit included. Check for temporary bloat. Okay, so again, this is a potential cause of problems with Revit. So this one isn't, again, this is something that's not so obvious. So the Revit journal folder, for each version of Revit that you've got installed, is a good place to look for temporary files. So when you're saving a non-shared work sharing model to a network drive, Revit will save a copy of that model to the journal folder. It's not that obvious, but if for some reason that Revit should crash, a copy of that model is left behind. So if you're running out of hard drive space, it's worth checking the journal file for any old or any files in there that you're not necessarily going to want models included. And typically this is where you'll find the journals, but there's lots of information online to allow you to find journal files. If you do need to free up this space, again, there's lots of information online. So this is a popular source here, and again, if you need to free up space by running a disk cleanup, or including those temporary files that we mentioned before, again, there are sites available that will give you all of the detail that you need. So use the QR codes to gain access to those if you need. Corrupt families. Finding the offending element. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to do with following this procedure is it's important that you take a copy of your existing model and operate this function on the copy. Don't do it to the original file because it's relatively severe. What you're going to do is to check if a particular Revit family or a family instance is causing the crashing. And this process basically involves you methodically deleting the content of the project. So in terms of this, this document explaining what to do, in essence, what it's going to ask you to do is to go to a 3D view and then physically select everything within the model. Then go to an elevation, delete a level, then delete all of the views apart from the default 3D view, delete all of the schedules, delete sheets, loaded families, design options, disable work sharing, and purging unused objects. And in essence, you're left with an empty model. If that solves the problem, you know that the issue is something to do with the elements that you've just deleted. If it doesn't solve the entity or the problem, well, you know it's fundamentally a corrupt model, and you're not really going to get an awful lot further with that. Having determined that the elements, some part of the elements, families, views, sheets, etc., whatever it may be, you're then going to repeat the exercise, but this time you're going to be more selective. You're going to delete one group of entities. So, for example, you delete all of the levels apart from one, and test whether or not that then solves the problem. And if it does, well, you know then that the entity is in one of the levels other than level 1. And you're going to follow this procedure where you're basically selectively deleting elements within the model via their grouping, whether or not they're entities, schedules, sheets, etc. And the idea is that you're going to isolate the individual group that's causing the crash. Once you've determined that that part of the model that's causing the problem, you're then in effect going to be filtering via one of the properties of whatever it is that you've selected. So in essence, this document will give you a detailed explanation of how you're selectively narrowing down the offending crashing item within the individual groupings within the model. And of course, you're doing this with copies. You're not doing it with the original, as I said, quite important. And although this can be quite a time-consuming process, if you're determined enough, you most likely will be able to determine which part of the model is defining the is creating the the problem as such. Resuscitating a corrupt model. So again, there are quite a few articles on the Autodesk knowledge base that will allow you to resolve corrupt models in different variations. For example, here where we have recovering a work shared model. So let's bring that one in. So recover a work shared model. So the basic concept here will be that you'll restore a backup. You're having opened up the backup, you'll then hopefully correct any issues with an audit or a purge. You'll clean out any temporary folders, and then you'll force Revit to recreate a local file having synced. So this will give you a detailed explanation of how you can recover a work shared model by following these instructions. Same again, but this time for a non-work shared model. So the process here is we'll open a project, and then you're going to use the Save Loaded Families tool, which in essence will extract every family from the project. And this can take a long time, particularly you have a lot of families within your project. But what will happen is if Revit encounters a corrupt family, it's at that point, it's at the point at which Revit determines one of the families is corrupt, this process will then crash. And what it will do is it will identify on the command line at the bottom which is the family which is actually corrupted. And once you've got that, you can then close Revit, reopen it completely afresh, and then determine to find the original, the corrupt model, the corrupt family, should I say, and then delete it. So again, this is quite a time-consuming process because you're extracting every family from the project. But by using this, if there is a corrupt family, Revit will be able to detect it. Again, options for recovering a BIM 360 model. So once again, Autodesk have an article on the knowledge base explaining what to do. So basically, this will give you 3 options of recovering a cloud-based model: either restore a previously saved version, a recently published model, or reinitiate a recovered local file. So once again, you have a document that will list out exactly how to deal with recovering BIM 360 shared models. This article is very useful because this is general troubleshooting. So this will give you details on how you can determine or how you can discover corrupt entities or entities that will cause crashing within a model. And this is possibly one of the go-to articles that you'd use because it's quite wide-ranging. So it will give you prompts, details on how to deal with desktop connector if that's causing corruption, open a model for using it to audit, what to do if elements have become corrupt, the procedure involved, data in a corrupt model, if the model is corrupt itself, unknown errors have occurred, recovering a work shared model, as we've just discussed, repairing a central model, again, as we've just discussed. So this will give you a lot of detail on potential causes of corruption within a Revit model. So this article in particular, Troubleshooting, and here's the QR code here on the right hand side. This is a good article to go to, first of all, to give you a grounding on what potentially may be causing your model to become corrupt. Again, Autodesk have published another article on how to save out loaded families. So previously I explained that one of the ways of determining whether or not you have a corrupt family is to save those families out. So this is a document, an article which will explain basically the process involved. But as I've said, it primarily involves extracting the families from the model. If one of those families has become corrupt, this process will crash at that point and it will identify that corrupt family. So this is although it's a time-consuming process, this is quite a convenient way of trying to find out which of families within your project may or may not be corrupt. And I'll just go back through that process. So what you do is you open a model and detach it from central if necessary, if that's appropriate. You use this feature called Save Out the Families, which is in the file Save As Library Family command. This is the document, the article I was just referring to. Make the note of the family that crashed Revit. So the last family will be visible on the status bar. Close Revit once you've determined which is the family. Then reopen Revit again. Open the central file if it's appropriate, and then you delete the corrupted family which you've identified with the previous process. Save your model and then repeat from the process as many times as you need to until eventually Revit doesn't crash. So this is a time-consuming process, but it can save, well, basically it will save you save if you've got a crash file. It will save you from being able to abandon the file. You'll be able to find the relevant crash. And then lastly, here's another document which basically explains the same process but in a slightly different way. In essence, they're fundamentally the same. So if you can't open or save a file with the audit, and we've mentioned this previously, it's a very similar process. Troubleshooting. It's generally a good idea to take a copy of a project and test the features I'm just about to mention to you on the copy and not the original. We're going to look at managing links, transfer project standards, view templates, the project browser, and cut and paste. All of these techniques we can use to solve specific problems. The first one we'll look at is managing links. So managing links can generate display errors. They can even crash a model, and they can stop you from opening a project. So your issue may be specifically that you have external links. If you can't open a project, one thing that you can try is copying the project to a drive where the links aren't present, and see if you can then open up that file where it won't find the links. So potentially it may open up the project without the links. If that's okay and that works, well then you can selectively try loading the links back in to try and isolate which one of them may potentially be causing a problem. So the problem may be related to one of the external links, and you can isolate the links by copying the project to a drive or to a location that doesn't have access to the links, and then try isolating it from that point onwards. Transfer project standards. So you can try using the transfer project standards to copy standards from a working project, a project that's correct, to a problem project. So there may be an aspect of the problem project, the project you're having an issue with. So it may be one of the standards. So try using project standards to transfer from a working project to the problem project. If that works successfully, again, pretty much as we've just described with the links, you can try being selective with the standards that you then load, and that should help you narrow down which one is solving the particular problem. View templates. Again, you may have a problem with a specific view. So you can try applying a view template to that problem view. If the problem disappears, well then you can look at the properties of the view template, and you can selectively be isolating each property, changing each property, and that will allow you to determine what property of the view template has overcome the problem. If you suspect that a group may be causing an error within your project, well, in the project browser, you can right mouse button on groups in the project browser. You can select all instances and then ungroup. So if the group was a problem, you can just ungroup all groups in one instance, in one go. Or rather than a group, maybe it's a specific type within a family that's causing the problem. So if that's the case, what you do is you could substitute a problem type for a different type. So you could, for example, you could create a new type within a different family, a sacrificial family, but of the same category. Then you can change the problem type to the new type that you've just created. That should then give you access or the ability to purge the problem family. If you were then to go in independently to create a new family or correct the original one independently, and then load that back into the project, well, then you could resurrect the original type by swapping the new updated family with its new updated type and override the originals. Alternatively, the problem may not relate to a type, it may relate to a specific instance. So you can use the project browser to remove all of the families except for one instance and see if that solves the problem. So by removing all of the instances apart from one, you may be able to narrow the problem down. And then finally, if it is an instance that's a problem, the technique that's worked in the past is you can cut and paste to the same place. So you can cut a specific type, copy it to the clipboard, cut it to the clipboard, and then paste it back aligned to the same place. And sometimes that will resolve an issue. Journal files. Understanding journal files. So a journal file is a text file that will help you visualize Revit performance, stability, and your current project health. So it contains useful information, typically the build version that you're using, hardware details, memory usage, path statements, timings, details of any plugins that you may or may not be using, any link files. It will keep a record of all of the commands that are currently being used. It will give you details of your processor and video card and printers. It will also have details related to work sharing. It will give you debug messages and diagnostic data. So with a combination of the potential debug messages and the commands issued, you can use a journal file to maybe identify and narrow down any problem within your Revit file. So journal files basically capture everything that's happened within your current session, from when you start to when you stop. Journal files typically can be found in this location. So users, your username, app data. App data is typically within Windows is a hidden folder, so you might have to show hidden folders to be able to visualize that. Local, Autodesk, Revit, your version of Revit, and then there's a dedicated journals folder. The journal file will typically be identified like this. It will say the word journal. It will then have a number which auto indexes, and generally the latest journal file is the highest number, and then as you can see it's got a text file associated with it.
Okay,
how to read a journal file.
Yet, so I'll try and talk over and see what's
because the journal file is keeping a track of timings. That's useful because if you know the time that the error occurred, you can search the syntax file for that time.
and that may
alternatively,
allow
or
you
in
to narrow
addition,
down
you
the
can
problem
search
based
for an
upon your
explicit
time.
error message. That will also give
Alternatively, it
you
might be an
details
error
of the error.
message, so you could use
Sometimes those
that
details will
to
be
find the
clear
problem.
or make it obvious what's happening, and sometimes it won't. But at least you've got a piece of text that will possibly
you can use the journal
allow you to
file
relate
try
to what the
and
error
determine what the problem is within the file,
or the problem
based upon
associated with the
time,
error.
or a
Ideally,
specific piece
what
of
you're
syntax.
doing is you're looking for a pattern.
What you're
You
doing is
want
you're
the
looking for a
same
pattern.
text appearing repeatedly.
You're looking for the
if
same
you can
text
see
to
that
appear
you're getting a
repeatedly.
consistent crash, there'll be
And then if you're seeing that
similar
pattern
text,
appear,
similar
then you know
syntax,
that
and
might
that will
potentially be
possibly
an
help you
issue.
narrow down what the problem is. If you're not sure what syntax to search for, then basically make a change within your Revit file.
Make a change within the Revit
for
file.
the details of that change with its
and then
timings,
look for the syntax,
and then
within
that
the
will give you the
journal file based
syntax.
around that time.
And then once you know the syntax, then that's the syntax that you
way
can be
you should
searching
be able
for.
to narrow down what the syntax is to
Autodesk
search for.
have given us an article associated
Autodesk has given us an article
with journal files,
which relates to my description.
So how to read a journal file.
How to read a journal file.
As I've done, and as you've seen, I've also
there's
included a QR code
file.
associated with that article.
So other considerations.
Other considerations dealing with CAD files. So from a troubleshooting point of view, using CAD files can be an issue. So of course,
I know they're very, very
linking in existing CAD files can be a benefit in all manner of ways, but they can be troublesome. They also cause considerable bloat within your project files.
They can cause a lot of
typically, and I'm sure you probably are already aware of this, but the recommendation is you do not explode an AutoCAD drawing in your projects or families. By doing so will cause severe increase in file size. A whole series of line styles will be created that are associated with the AutoCAD layers. So ideally, exploding a CAD file is generally just prompting fate, tempting fate. If you do need to explode an AutoCAD drawing within a Revit project, don't do it within the working project. Do it in a sacrificial project.
You want to do it within a sacrificial model.
Selectively copy the entities that have been exploded in the sacrificial project into the working project.
That's where the bloating will
appear. That way you can overcome
and then what you'll be able to do is to copy and paste those entities into your working project, and then
generally it's preferable to link CAD files rather than importing them. You'll get more control if you link CAD file.
You have more control over
those CAD files would need to be cleaned up. You need to create a version of that CAD file for the purpose of importing it into Revit. So that typically means getting rid of all of the working out that's been drawn in outer space, purging an AutoCAD, purging and auditing the AutoCAD drawing, setting proxy graphics to 1. So generally, don't bring in the native AutoCAD drawing. Invest a little bit of time in setting up a new CAD file specifically fine-tuned for bringing it into Revit.
I think it may resolve
and by doing so, you'll potentially have less problems than you would otherwise. Unload and remove any link files when not required.
So if you can't hear the audio,
navigating between one file and another, or just navigating generally in Revit, if you've got CAD files associated with it, that will slow that navigation down. So preferably don't have CAD files in your projects if you can help it. And avoid using CAD files within families. Again, It's quite useful to be able to do so, but in terms of troubleshooting, the potential for there to be problems is that much greater. And also associated, avoid using undos after sync with central. Cancelling the sync, that leaves the model in an inconsistent state. So it just a couple of general considerations. Plugins. So of course, plugins are becoming more and more prevalent within Revit, and the API is giving more and more access to plugins. And generally, it's quite rare for a plugin to cause a problem, but it's not unknown. So ideally, it would be good if you want to troubleshoot, or a technique to troubleshoot is to disable any add-ins and see if that makes the stability of the project better. So again, Autodesk have provided an article associated with this, how to disable add-ins within your Revit project. And again, you can use the QR code to gain access to that. Resetting Revit. So if you've got this far and you've still got a problem, then maybe it's time to look at resetting Revit from scratch. So unlike other Autodesk software, Revit doesn't have a reset button as such. We have a little bit of editing to do if we wish to reset Revit. These past statements will need to be renamed. These will be recreated when we reset. So ideally, you could either delete these past statements, or more likely leave them where they are and just rename them with an old suffix. It's probably safer. We're then going to go in and use the regedit command to then rename these two statements. Before you do so, you will want to back up the registry. Making edits, unintentional edits within the registry file, can cause major problems within Revit. So before you do that, you should back up the registry file before you make your edits. So with that in mind, there is an article that will Autodesk allow us to back up the registry, and here's the QR code that we mentioned before. I mentioned previously. Once you've reset or those registry keys, you may potentially want to save any customization that you've made to the keyboard shortcuts. And with that in mind, again, there's an article that Autodesk have created that will allow you to do that. Export the keyboard shortcuts, and once again, the QR code. So you can reset Revit by going into the registry, having backed up the registry before you do any modifications, take an edit, make some edits within the registry file. You'd previously renamed some folders. Those folders will be recreated. You'll then restart Revit, and hopefully that will have solved the issue. Repairing Revit. So repairing Revit is an alternative to the workflow that we've just done in terms of manually resetting Revit. So there's a certain amount of duplication between the two commands or the two features. Repairing Revit involves going into the control panel, program and features, and then clicking clicking the uninstall/change option. With that selected, you'll then select the product that you wish to uninstall/change, which in this case will be Revit. you'll then be given a further choice of either repairing or reinstalling. So with this option, we'll try to repair Revit. So repair with this option replaces all of the registry entries for that product as they were initially installed and restores them to their default state, pretty much replicating what we did with the repairing option we've just seen. You use this option if product files are missing. Reinstall, so this option again repairs the registry and reinstalls all of the original files from the original installation. So they are different, but both of these methods kind of replicate the previous workflow. Obviously, you select finish once you've done so. If neither of those two options work, you have a further option which is referred to as a clean uninstall. So what this will do is a more thorough uninstall. Doing an uninstall will leave behind remnants of the original uninstall, whereas a clean uninstall is a little bit more thorough. It will completely wipe out any reference to the previous software and then allow you to reinstall again. Once again, as so often, Autodesk have an article how to complete that. So how to complete a clean uninstall. Here's the QR code if you wish to use it. If all else fails, and you've tried all of the previous steps and none of those have been able to resolve the issue, you might need to get some help. We at Greytech offer a technical support contract. Alternatively, of course, you can contact Autodesk. If you do contact Autodesk, one of the first things they'll ask you for are the journal files that we mentioned previously. And again, this is a link to the same document. So location of the journal files with the QR code. In addition to the journal files, no doubt you'll be asked for the cropped project, any backups, any link files, whether they be Revit, IFC or CAD files, and quite possibly you might also be asked for an MS info file, which will provide system information for diagnostics. And again, we have a QR code. And here's the document. So for you to generate the MS info code, the MS info file. While we're dealing with the question and answers, I'm going to be showing a summary of all of the QR codes that we've used throughout the presentation. There are 3 sheets of them. I will suggest that if you're interested, that you take a screen grab of these QR codes and then you can link to them at your leisure. So as I say, there are 3 sheets. I'm going to leave sheet 1 open for a minute or so. I'll then go on to sheet 2 and then sheet 3. And in the meantime, we'll deal with any questions as they arise. So I'll leave sheet 1 open. As I suggest, take a screen grab if any of these are of interest to you. So this is sheet 1. Sheet 2. And sheet 3. I'll work my way back up them again, just to give you another opportunity to Take a screen grab if you wish. So sheet 3, sheet 2, and then sheet 1.
Apologies for the audio problem halfway through that, folks. I have no idea why there was a problem, but hopefully that didn't cause too much of a problem.
Answers.
Yes, question and answers. I'm available to answer any questions if anybody has any. Okay, no questions. So thank you for attending. Hopefully you found some of this of interest, and should you have a problem with Revit, I think the thing to do is look on the knowledge base, and almost certainly there'll be some sort of an answer for your problem. So thank you for attending, and good luck.